The shelter was alive with sound. Barking dogs, squeaky toys, and cheerful voices of families meeting their potential new companions. But in the very back corner of the building, where the fluorescent lights didn't quite reach, there was a silence that hung thick in the air. A silence that surrounded one dog whose presence barely registered anymore. His name was Max. Max was an elderly German shepherd with a coat that had lost its luster and eyes that had dimmed under the weight of time and neglect. Once majestic, once proud, Max now lay curled tightly in the shadows of his kennel, his ribcage faintly visible through thinning fur. He no longer stood when visitors approached. He didn't bark, didn't whine, didn't even lift his head. He had become invisible, even to himself. Max had been in the shelter for over a year. 365 days. Each one a slow echo of the one before. When Max first arrived, he still had hope. He had come from a loving home, deeply bonded with his owner. A retired Army veteran who had rescued Max as a puppy and raised him with quiet strength. The two had been inseparable, walking together through parks, watching old movies on the couch, and falling asleep side by side every night. Then, one morning, everything changed. His owner didn't wake up. Max had waited by the door, tail thumping gently against the floor, not understanding why the paramedics took him away, not understanding why no one came back. Days passed. Then came strangers, his owner's family, somber-faced and distant. They packed up belongings. They loaded boxes. And then, they brought Max to the shelter. He's old, they told the shelter staff. We can't take him. Just like that, Max lost everything. The fade. At first, Max would sit at the front of his kennel whenever someone walked by, tail wagging slowly, ears perked with fading hope. But people came and went, smiling at younger dogs, gushing over puppies, paying no mind to the gray-muzzled shepherd in the shadows. One by one, the dogs that arrived after Max left before him, adopted into loving homes, full of energy and promise. Max stayed. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, months to silence. He stopped eating regularly. He turned away treats. Volunteers tried coaxing him out with toys or gentle voices, but Max remained motionless, eyes dull, breath shallow. The once mighty protector had retreated deep inside himself, a prisoner of grief and abandonment. He had stopped waiting. A spark. Then, on a mild spring afternoon, something unusual happened. The shelter had a few visitors. A young woman named Elena and her 8-year-old daughter Lily, who had saved every birthday dollar for a chance to adopt a dog. Lily was sunshine in sneakers, bounding from kennel to kennel, giggling as the puppies barked and licked at the bars. "Mommy, look at this one," she'd say every few minutes, voice bubbling with excitement. But as they neared the back row, Lily stopped. Her smile faded, and her gaze fell on the dark kennel in the corner. "Why's that dog all alone?" she asked, pointing toward Max's shadowed form. Elena looked where her daughter was pointing, and her heart ached. Max hadn't moved. He looked almost like part of the kennel itself. A nearby staff member stepped over, her expression soft. "That's Max. He's been here over a year, lost his owner, and, well, nobody really asks about him anymore." Lily tilted her head. "Why not?" The worker sighed. "He's old. He doesn't get up much. Most people want dogs who'll run and play." Lily took a step closer to Max's kennel, crouched down, and simply sat there. She didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just let herself be present in his quiet. After a few minutes, she whispered, "Hi, Max." For a long time, there was no response. But then, something miraculous happened. Max sniffed. Just a little. Just enough. His nose twitched, and he lifted his head a few inches, barely perceptible, but enough for the shelter worker's eyes to widen. "That's the first time he's reacted to anyone in months," she said, astonished. Elena knelt beside her daughter, and together they watched Max, whose gaze now lingered on them a little longer. Lily pressed her hand gently against the metal bars, not begging, not coaxing, just letting him know she was there. And Max, ever so slowly, leaned forward to sniff her fingers. It was not a leap. It was not a bark or a tail wag. But it was hope. A choice. Back in the front office, Elena looked torn. "He's very old," the shelter worker warned. "He doesn't move much. He may not have much time left." "I'm not looking for years," Elena said quietly. "I'm looking to give him love for whatever time he has left." The worker hesitated, then nodded. "Would you like to meet him outside the kennel?" "I'd love to," Elena replied. It took gentle coaxing and several minutes, but eventually Max stood up. His legs were stiff, trembling slightly with effort. But he took 2 steps toward the open kennel door. 2 shaky, monumental steps. Everyone in the room went silent. Elena knelt down, her voice soft as feathers. "It's okay, Max. You're safe." When Max reached the edge of the kennel, Lily held her breath. He looked at her, really looked at her, and then he walked out. The adoption papers were signed that afternoon. The ride home. Max didn't bark on the way home. He didn't pant or pace. He simply lay still in the back seat, head resting on his paws, as if uncertain whether this was real or just another part of a long, strange dream. Lily kept glancing back at him, her eyes wide with quiet wonder. "We're going home, Max," she said softly. "You're not invisible anymore." Max didn't move, but his ears twitched. When they arrived at their small but cozy house, Max hesitated at the front door. He looked up at the porch, then back at Elena, uncertain. "You can come in," Elena said, holding the door open. "This is your home now." Max stood still. Then, step by step, he crossed the threshold. The hallway smelled of cinnamon and soft cotton. There was no barking, no cold cement, just warmth. Max sniffed gently at the rug, the corners of the room, the base of the couch. He didn't rush. He simply took it all in like a soul returning to something long forgotten. And then, he did something no one expected. He walked over to Elena, leaned against her leg, and let out a deep, shuddering breath. Not one of exhaustion, one of relief. First wag. That evening, after dinner, Max curled up on a soft rug near the fireplace. Lily placed a small blanket over his back, and Elena sat nearby sipping tea. No one spoke. There was no need. As the fire flickered and shadows danced along the walls, Max stirred slightly. And then, it happened. His tail wagged. Just once. Just a faint, slow wag. But it was there. Lily clapped a hand over her mouth in surprise. Elena leaned forward, smiling through tears. Max's eyes closed slowly, and a peaceful stillness settled around him. He was home. Finally, he was home. The first night in his new home, Max didn't sleep. He lay curled on the rug by the fireplace, his ears twitching at every creak of wood, every faint whistle of wind through the windows. His eyes remained half open, blinking slowly. It wasn't fear. At least, not the kind that made him tremble or whimper. It was something deeper, something older. Uncertainty. After so long living behind cold steel bars, after months of being ignored, Max couldn't believe this warmth was meant for him. That the quiet hum of the home, the flicker of firelight, the soft breathing of a sleeping child nearby, all belonged to him now. Max had known love before, but he'd also known how quickly it could be taken. New mornings. When Elena woke the next morning, she stepped quietly into the living room. Max was awake, already sitting upright, his eyes focused on her, but his body unmoving. He looked at her like someone trying to recognize a dream they weren't sure they had. "Morning, sweet boy," she said, her voice still heavy with sleep. "Did you rest?" Max tilted his head just slightly, then lowered it again. Not quite a nod, But not nothing either. She poured herself some coffee and sat beside him on the rug. She didn't touch him, still careful, still earning trust. She just sipped her drink and watched the fire quietly crackle. Lily woke up soon after and ran in barefoot, dropping to her knees beside Max without hesitation. "Good morning, Max," she chirped. He didn't flinch. He didn't turn away. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed his nose against her arm. It was the first deliberate gesture he'd made. Lily beamed. "He loves me already." Elena smiled over the rim of her mug. "He sees you." That's where it starts. Learning home. Over the next few weeks, Max began to explore his new world, inch by inch. The backyard was fenced and full of sunlight. Birds fluttered in the trees, and a few squirrels liked to tease from the branches. Max watched them with mild interest, but never chased. He didn't run. His body was too tired for that. But he walked. He walked every morning and every evening, slowly, carefully, with Elena or Lily by his side. At first, he'd stop every few feet and look back, unsure if he was allowed to keep going, afraid someone might call him back, lock him up, forget him. But no one did. Each time, he was gently encouraged forward. "You're free, Max," Elena would whisper. "Take your time." And he did. He found comfort in the mundane routines. The clink of the food bowl in the morning, the way Lily hummed when she colored in the living room, the soft thump of Elena's slippers moving from room to room. These were things Max had never thought he'd know again. But perhaps the greatest moment came one evening, when Max, entirely unprompted, climbed onto the couch. Elena had been reading, her feet tucked under a blanket. Max slowly approached, paused, and then, with a quiet grunt, hoisted his front paws up and settled beside her. Not on top of her, not in her lap, just close, close enough that his shoulder brushed her knee. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply reached out and let her fingers rest against his fur. Moments that matter. Time passed, not in leaps, but in ripples. Max didn't become a new dog overnight. He didn't suddenly start playing fetch or rolling on the grass. But every day, there was something. A small tail wag when Lily got home from school. A bark, just once, when a squirrel got too close to the window. A low, contented sigh when Elena ran her hand down his back. And then one day, a real miracle, Max picked up a toy. It was an old squeaky bone Lily had left near his bed. He didn't play with it, not really. He just carried it gently in his mouth to the fireplace and lay down beside it. Like a memory, like a comfort. Lily ran to tell Elena, "He has a favorite toy." Elena came out, watching Max snuggle next to the faded rubber bone. "Every soul needs something soft," she whispered. Visitors. One Sunday afternoon, Elena's sister came to visit with her young son, Jack. Jack was 6, full of energy and questions and snack crumbs. He darted into the house, yelling, "Where's the dog? I want to see the dog." Max had been resting in the hallway. When Jack came running around the corner, loud and fast, Max jerked upright, eyes wide, body stiff. Jack stopped. "Whoa, he's big." Elena was already there, kneeling beside Max, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe. He's just a kid." Max's breathing slowed, but his body remained tight. Jack, sensing the change in the room, backed up a step. "He looks sad," Jack said softly. Lily stepped forward, taking Jack's hand. "He's not sad. He's just remembering." That night, Max didn't eat. He sat by the window, staring at the moonlit yard. Elena knelt beside him and said, "I know it's hard. The past sneaks up sometimes." Max didn't move, but when she stood up to leave, he pressed his nose into her palm and held it there for a moment. He understood. A gentle goodbye. Winter came slowly that year. The first frost curled across the windows like lace. Elena added another blanket to Max's bed. Lily wrapped him in her old scarf. Max was slower now. His legs ached more. He slept longer, ate less. One morning, he didn't get up when Elena opened the back door. Not even for the fresh air he'd come to love. She sat beside him on the rug. "Is it today?" she asked quietly. Max looked at her, eyes soft, and laid his head in her lap. Lily came in, sleepy-eyed, and crawled beside them. "Is Max okay?" she asked. "He's tired," Elena said gently. "Really tired." Lily nodded, her lower lip trembling. "Does he have to go?" Elena didn't lie. "I think his heart is full now. And when hearts are full, sometimes they're ready to rest." That afternoon, they took Max to the vet. Not because he was suffering, but because it was time. He had given everything he had, and now he needed to be allowed to let go. With love. The vet's office was warm, quiet. Lily held his paw. Elena whispered in his ear, "You were never broken, Max. Just waiting to be found." As the medicine flowed, Max's breathing slowed. His body relaxed. And then, in his final moment, his tail wagged. Not out of fear, not out of confusion, out of peace. The forever kind of home. Max was buried in the backyard, beneath the old oak tree. Lily painted a stone with his name. Beneath it, in uneven but earnest handwriting, she wrote, "You were seen. You were loved. You were home." In the weeks that followed, the house felt different. Not empty, but quiet. Like something sacred had passed through and left behind a trace of light. Lily missed him deeply, but she often said, Max didn't need a whole new life. He just needed the ending to be different. Elena began volunteering at the shelter, not because she wanted to replace Max, but because she knew there were others like him. Others fading into corners, just waiting for someone to say, "What about him?" One day, Lily came home with a drawing. It showed Max sitting in front of a window, stars above him, his favorite squeaky bone by his side. "He's watching over us," she said. Elena kissed her forehead. "He always will." Max's story ends here. But it changed everything. Max didn't run through fields or chase tennis balls. He didn't live 10 more years or learn new tricks. But he mattered. He mattered in the quiet way a soft blanket does on a cold night. In the way an old song can make you cry. In the way a single question from a little girl, "What about him?" can open the door to a life worth finishing. Max didn't need to be perfect. He just needed someone to stay. And in the end, someone did.